Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's going to be reviewing the album Saved by Reverend Kristin Michael Hayter. And I'm going to do it in a way different than the way that I usually do it. First of all, let me tell you a story that has nothing to do with music. Definitely nothing to do with this album, but it does have something to do with the experience and the feeling that art can give you. Halloween 1996, I went to the Harvard Film Archive to try to watch Nosferatu, the remake done by Werner Herzog. For some reason, they weren't playing it there, and in its place, they were playing some new movie that wasn't going to come out for another couple months. The movie was directed by horror master Wes Craven, and it was called Scream. And I demanded my money back. Now, I didn't even buy a ticket, but I just got angry, and I went and I talked to the manager, and I said, how can this possibly be? And someone came by and said, just see the movie, okay? Just see the movie, and if it isn't good, you can find me, and I'll give you your money back, okay? So I went and saw the movie Scream, having never even heard of it, not seeing a single frame of it. And that experience is by far the best movie experience I will ever have, because my ignorance was complete. I knew nothing about what I was experiencing. I had no preconceived notion. No one had told me it was scary. I had never seen The Mask. None of it. It was bliss. Now, what does that have to do with this album, Saved? Well, what I'm going to be doing differently now is I'm going to be giving you two reviews in one. You'll see in the description a link to a timestamp where you have a choose-your-own-adventure. I'm going to give you my traditional fruity-tooty, wearing a suit kind of description of this album and talk about, oh, and this reference and that reference. But there's a better review that I recorded after listening to this album for the first time. And I'm going to put that a timestamp at the end of this review. I'm going to actually edit and show it to you. I recorded it in the dark in my driveway. Because I listened to this album for the first time the same way I entered that movie theater in 1996. I had no idea what I was going to listen to. A couple of you auditors, I don't know, I forget who, I apologize, have said like 3 or 4 times in my reviews, how come no Reverend Kristin Michael Hayter review? How come no Reverend Miss Hayter review, okay? And just that was kind of bouncing around in my head, just bouncing around in my head. So I took my daughter to something called Model UN. It was like way far out into just the middle of the countryside over here in Western New York. And it was a 40-minute drive. So the whole way there, we drive and we're talking and it's all fine. And then on the way back, she's like, Dad, let's listen to some music. And so I go, oh yeah, look up Reverend Kirsten or Kristin. Just look up that, and then whatever the first thing is, we'll listen to that. And she's like, Reverend Kristin Michael Hayter? I'm like, yes. So she gets it, and she presses play. At this point, my ignorance is complete. I don't know what's going to happen. I hear the name Reverend, so I immediately think of like Father John Misty. I think it's going to be some kind of like snarky, fake religious thing, or it's going to be just a joke that that's the name. I had totally forgotten that this was the real name of an artist who I've already recorded. Listen, I do 3 videos a week. I forget more than I remember. And so I am driving with my daughter, and this album starts, and we are both completely blown away. We both individually have a completely transcendental religious experience listening to this music that is about a completely transcendental religious experience. And I cannot thank this music enough for its existence for that reason. The same way that I went to see Scream in 1996, and I have never been so scared. I have never laughed so hard. Meta commentary like that had never been seen before. That mask, oh my God, it was pure 90s bliss. And this did this thing where my daughter and I just sat in the car in silence, except for this music, driving along the rural Western New York highways and byways, listening to this music. This aching, painful, impossible to place music. So while we're driving and I'm listening, 2 things are happening to me. 1, I'm having a religious experience that transcends thought, okay? And I know I'm speaking like a weird old hippie, but I don't care. I'm going to talk about that more, okay? religious experience that transcends thought, okay? I've been getting a lot of hell for my Beatles video that I did. A lot of people are mad at me for being too critical. They all say the same thing. Turn off your brain and just enjoy it. Let your soul flow. Yeah, that Beatles song is fine, but you want to let your soul flow, listen to this. So I have this whole part of me that's having this experience where everything is transcending. And then the critic in me is in there. And the critic is in there saying, what is this? Come on. Come on. What is this? What is it? What is it? What is it? Who is it at? What is this about? Who is this? Who is this? Is it possible that this is like found footage? Or if you don't know, if you've never listened, look up Alan Lomax, Appalachian Journey. He went, I think it was like in the 80s and 90s, and he recorded all this great music from the Appalachians. Like I thought maybe this was really some Pentecostal music that had been discovered in some church, some recording, and some hipster found it and uploaded it. I don't know. I didn't know if this Reverend was a real Reverend who maybe had been dead for 50 years or maybe not. The production told me it was probably new, okay? It wasn't trying to be, Blair Witch Project. It wasn't trying to be found footage, but it had some of those aesthetics. So at this point I'm driving and these two things are happening. My soul is lifting towards heaven and then my mind is getting heavier and heavier as I'm thinking about, well, what is this? So if it's a modern person, we then have to figure out how earnest is this person being. If this person is fully earnest, then I am probably not getting to hear it. Okay? Because real Christian music generally does not get tackled by intellectuals and music critics. Okay? So if this is on my radar, it means it's probably not real Christian music, which means it is probably made by somebody who is educated. So maybe this is not earnest at all. Maybe it's satire. That would be bad. There's no way this can be satire. But there's a chance, and this is what I imagined, was that this was somebody who was like me. When I was in my 20s, I listened to Appalachian music. I listened to the Alan Lomax recordings. I listened to bluegrass, the Monroe Brothers, What Would You Give in Exchange for Your Soul? I listened to all this Southern Christian music. And I had this sense that it was fulfilling something in me. There was a void inside me, and I didn't know how to fill it. And I wasn't going to do drugs, and I wasn't going to buy a lot of sneakers to fill in that hole. So this oldie-timey music was connecting to me. So what I figured was, that's probably what it was. Now, it turns out I was right. But the thing is, this never goes to what I call the Jack White end, okay? So Jack White does a lot of this kind of stuff too, but there's something always kind of winking, kind of trendy. This album, even though, obviously, now that I know more about it, I understand who it's bilingual, Ignota, etc., and it's somebody who's well-known, and she was interviewed by Fantano, and is all part of it, reviewed on Pitchfork, okay, I get it. But you have to remember, the first time I heard it, I didn't know. I did not know. And what I was struck was the fearlessness of this album. Because this album is about Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. Okay? I am sorry to say it is exclusively about Jesus Christ dying on the cross for our sins, salvation that comes from being washed in his blood. Okay? Now I apologize because Christianity, well, I'll talk about Christianity in a second. But let me tell you why this ignorance is so important. Why connecting with this album this way was the greatest chance that could ever happen. Because here's the deal. If I had waited till December to watch Scream and everyone was telling me how hip and cool and snarky and self-referential it was, and I'd seen videos of The Mask over and over and over again, it would not have had the same effect. If you just take as an example, and I'm not picking on this, someone wrote on the first song that blew my mind, completely blew my mind, it's annotated on Genius as this. She starts, and again, this is a fair interpretation that is also, I believe, totally wrong. She starts off the album with a song about running away. Considering the subtext of her leaving both Lingua Ignota behind and having just left an extremely abusive relationship, the song is likely a metaphor for escaping an abusive situation, trying to change her life for the better, even though doing so can be really difficult and ugly. No, it's about Jesus. It's about Jesus. It's not about the earthly quest for oneself. It is about this transcendental need to connect to God. Okay? The reason why I apologize, obviously, Christianity is currently and has been responsible for so many atrocities, so much murder, abuse, all those terrible things you could possibly imagine. There is no defending the institution of Christianity. But the Christian imagination, Christian art, the actual text of the Bible, the actual figure of Jesus Christ as an idea, as a spiritual ideal, is amazing, is flawless, okay? Not flawless, but what I'm saying is, this album is so fearless because it goes right into that Christian imagination. And when I talk about Christian imagination, I'm talking about the things that are lost. So I am happy that we live in a secular world. It is better that church and state are separated. It is better that we do not entirely rely on dogmatic Christian views. But there is a loss, okay? There is a loss. It's a spiritual loss. We have replaced that need for some kind of deep spiritual connection largely with consumerism. Now, I don't just mean buying sneakers. It can be drugs. It can be sex. It can even be love. But it's about the self. That's where we've pointed our eyes and pointed our spiritual direction, okay? The religious section of a bookstore is self-help, okay? So transcendence has been deferred. Trying to reach some higher plane, trying to reach something that goes beyond human understanding, has largely been put aside. So, that's a loss. Now, what's interesting is, according to all my commenters, I hate the Beatles. Truth is, I love the Beatles. And I'm fascinated by the figure of George Harrison, because George Harrison was simultaneously the most spiritual and least spiritual musician of the 20th century. He's just dominated by his obsession with taxes, while at the same time, thinking constantly about living beyond and transcending and connecting to something more spiritual, living in the material world. Like so much art has been trying to manage this. When Bob Dylan lost his mind and became religious, a lot of people who were following everything that Bob Dylan did rejected it because the idea of being Christian was so impossible. It was impossible to have the idea in your head of Bob Dylan, born-again Christian, and Bob Dylan, genius voice of our generation. So that's what this album does. It has the courage to be about Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is not cool. Okay? Like, not cool. You know what I'm saying? In a way, it's a lot like what Kanye West did with Jesus as King, where it really was about Jesus. Now, it was also about himself, and he wasn't as effective at it, but maybe songs like never made to an album, like Washed in the Blood, still there is this attempt to connect to something else, and it leads to different kinds of stories. And that's the thing about the Christian imagination, right? So you have to understand that for centuries and centuries, you could only, if you were in a Christian civilization, and most of the civilizations that made art that we consider to be a part of what we now call, or what we used to call, the Western canon, which is a very problematic term, which I have no interest in defining right now. But when we talk about art and architecture and literature, there was one focal point, and it had to be Jesus, and it had to be the stories from the Bible. Therefore, human creativity, in its brilliance, managed to take those different themes and do different things with them, right? So it's not like, oh, you just have to talk about Jesus and you have to talk about it the same way. You can tell stories of forgiveness, stories of judgment, stories of domination and subordination of the weak. In this album, the one by Reverend Kristin, I'm just going to call her Reverend Kristin because I forget Michael Hayter. Anyways, in this album, it's stories of yearning, of salvation. It's that yearning for some kind, and again, oh boy, I am talking like I know what I'm talking about. I understand I don't, okay? Forgive me if I am misreading this album. feel free to tell me in the comments. I am coming at you as somebody who believes strongly that ignorance is profound. Okay? That's what it says on my mug. That's my motto. There's a profundity in not knowing things. But this is my interpretation. It's about this desire to escape the emptiness and the misery of the modern world. And one way to do it is through Jesus. Quick aside. My father accidentally invented Christian rock music. You can watch a video about that. I'll put that in the description. My father was a reverend. Not during my lifetime. He quit the church. The church fired him, actually, because he was too much of a 60s rebel. And he then went to work as a bank and then ended his last several decades of life being a kind of writer. So the Christian imagination looms very heavily in my mind. But I am not like a churchgoer. I have been to church. There have been times, I'm confirmed and baptized and all that. But on a personal level, I find it important. I consider myself a Christian who has no comfort with the Christian church. So just to put that on the side so you know where I'm coming from. I'm not a Buddhist or a Muslim. When I think about this album, its beauty, its simplicity, its strength, and its sort of world, it obviously reminds me of certain goth musicians that I like who often will sing about these themes. Swans, for example, will often touch on these themes. And more specifically, I think the artist who this reminds me most of is certain eras of Nick Cave, where it's a kind of gothic, it's a combination of like gothic religion and southern gothic, and you kind of mix them together and you have this sort of double gothness. In particular, Nick Cave's cover of Bob Dylan's song, Death Is Not the End. I think that's a perfect comp here, because when Bob Dylan was writing that, he was not being facetious, he was not being cute, he was trying to connect to Jesus Christ, and I believe when Nick Cave was singing that song, he was trying to connect to Jesus Christ. The other person this reminds me of is Sarah Mary Chadwick, who is sort of a devilish version of this, sort of piano and singing and very strong voice. So I told you I was driving with my daughter, and so we listened to this album, and we basically got to hear the whole thing on the way back. It's beautiful, because I talk a lot, she talks a lot, we talk a lot. This album, we didn't talk much, we just kind of sat there listening. And it was great, she was loving it so much, and her comps were to Ethel Cain and certain songs by Julian Baker. And what she said was, this is music that makes me want to go back to church. And that sentiment does not last until Sunday morning at 9:30 when we'd have to get up to go, right? But that's the beauty of this. And that's, to me, the beauty of, you see behind me, there's a book on French cathedrals. You can have it both ways, I think. I'm not going to judge you. So I'm the son of a preacher man. No matter how hard I tried. You can have it both ways. You can just take as much as you want from the Christian world. Have you been to a cathedral in France? And I don't mean Notre Dame in Paris, which is fine, but it's overrun. Have you been to Bourges in France? Please go. Please go, and you will feel something. You will feel a connection. Now, maybe that's the connection to Jesus Christ. Maybe. I think it's more interesting to think of it as an expression of human desire to connect to the divine. So that's why you can go to a Shinto temple and have the same feeling that you do to a Christian cathedral. Okay? That's the power. The power comes from the human desire to connect to the divine. And if it happens to take the shape of Allah or Buddha or Vishnu or whatever, fine. But I think in the end of the day, what really matters is that sense of transcendence. Art where the goal is going beyond our physical form. So, I was talking about there was a couple of years where I did go to church. I went to a local church here. But I was just going for the organ. When you live near Rochester, New York, everyone who plays organs in a church is like a professionally trained because they went to Eastman School. So there was this organist, and he'd play Bach every single day, every single Sunday after church. And everything was fine, and communion's wonderful, and talking about this, and Thomas touching the wound, and blah, 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 blah. But at the end, when he's playing that music, and I know that Bach is trying to connect to God, and maybe the organist isn't trying to connect to God, but he's trying to connect to someone who's trying to connect to God, you can have that feeling. And that feeling is largely gone in our modern day. And I'm not saying that's bad, okay? I would much rather live in a world that has Panera bread than that created Bourges Cathedral, okay? The society that created Bourges Cathedral was about to have the wars of religion and the plague, okay? I'll go to Panera, all right? I'll get a Sierra turkey sandwich in my godless heathen world, okay? But still, let's try to have it all. Let's try to have Panera bread. I don't know why I keep talking about Panera this week, and this spirituality. When it comes to the production of this album, it's a beautiful work of anti-production. It is a beautiful work, just no layers, okay? The thing about production these days is it's all MacBooks and Pro Tools Pro and GarageBand and whatever the hell people use to have 1,000 different layers over everything. It's a voice and a piano. Digital is used. Why am I saying that like Trump? And digital is used, but it's only used to create a kind of trompe l'oreille, right? Trompe l'oeil is how you say to fool the eye. Trompe l'oreille is how you'd say fool the ear. It's not a real expression, but I'm a French teacher, so I'm going to create it anyways. A way of trying to fool you into thinking that this is a piece of archival tape, which is beautiful. So, if you like this video so far, if you got the spirit, you can smash the like bucket, subscribe. If you want me to heart your comment, AVAA stands for awesome video as always. I heart every comment that says that. Or if you want to disagree with me and complain, I'm totally cool with that. Are you a holdover from the Beatles videos? What's up? Did you know that I like George Harrison? I do. Okay. So I want to give you a stamp, an example song. May this comfort and protect you. The sound that this album gets, it's a piano that has some kind of like something. So the way, a piano is a drum, right? Piano is a percussion instrument. You press the key, and then that's connected to a little hammer, and the hammer hits a string, and the string is tuned to a certain note. That's how it works. So if you put stuff on top of those strings, you can have a sound. In this case, there's a kind of rattling, metallic, honky-tonk, tacky sound. And it's like each hit of this piano is an explosion of noise. Oh, I can't even. But this is that thing I'm talking about, that transcendent feeling. This is like the best production of the year, and it's just her voice and a piano. And it's that realness, that's the other thing that's escaping us. And God damn, I sound like a boomer. But it's true, okay? We are missing a little bit of realness. We are missing a little bit of tactile feeling. There's a reason why vinyl is selling and CDs aren't. Why vintage pinball machines are going up in value, okay? There is a certain degree to which we want to touch things and feel things, and this album has all that directness. Lyrically, why I love this is because it's just a real hymn. And I could try to come up with some kind of earthly thing, but no. The Lord shall mend your broken heart and hold your aching soul. His boundless love shall make you whole. May this comfort and protect you. Beautiful. It's a beautiful hymn. It's a more hopeful song than most of the rest of the album, which is part of the reason I like it. I'm a hopeful guy. But it's about the way that loving in the Lord can provide you some kind of comfort, which is a lot of the purpose of the Lord existing in any of its forms, right? And hymns, that's the other thing that I learned in going to church. Some hymns are so good. Even though I went to absolutely the most waspy, like stuck up church possible, when we would sing like some really good hymns, like Lift Every Voice, oh my God. I just wanted to throw my hands up and go, oh, because that's the other thing. You can hate church, but if you like popular music, I got bad. I don't know what to tell you, bud. Popular music largely comes from the church. Popular music without church without Christianity is like life forms without carbon. Like it just wouldn't have happened. So there's a lot of great stuff that comes from church music. And this is I was going to say a perfect imitation of a hymn, but let's just give her the credit and say this is a hymn. Put it in your church books. Hey, Reverend, whoever's out there. Unfortunately, the Reverend that I like at my local church left, which is why I stopped going. It has an authenticity that cannot be fabricated. It cannot. Jack White could not write a hymn this good. Why am I picking on Jack White so much? And her voice has this amazing sustain and range and rising sounds and low sounds. And by the end, it's raw. She has such a beautiful, strong voice. You feel it. You feel that she has the talent to sing and connect you with the divine in the same way that a great preacher can connect you with the divine. By the end, it has all this speaking in tongues. It's also known as glossolalia. It's just a different way of speaking from a place where you are not aware of what you're saying. You can debunk speaking in tongues. Go for it. Go for it. Look it up. Okay, I'm sure The Amazing Atheist or any of those weird fashos have 1,000 proven false speaking in tongues. If you've ever seen it, if you've ever been around it, okay, you can say it's fake. I can tell you those people are making those sounds, and I don't hear those sounds usually. It's an amazing way to end this whole song, and part of what made me never know where this album actually was from. So there's my stamp, but the rest of the album is just as good. With the exception of one song I don't like as much. We'll get there. The first track is I'm Getting Out While I Can. This was what I just didn't know, right? This is the first song I put on, and it does this thing where the tape sounds like it's cutting out, and then it goes even further, and it sounds like the Bluetooth connection to your car. So you're driving in your Sienna, your Toyota Sienna with your daughter. You're somewhere in Western New York, not even on 490, 590, or 390 yet, and all of a sudden it sounds like, and I'm like, hey, goat, is the connection okay? And she looks and she says, yeah, I got 5 bars and I can't quite tell what it is. And it's this beautiful little trick because it's showing the different forms of technological imperfection that can make their way into art. There's no consistent rhythms. You can't count on it. It's just the beauty of this voice and this tacked piano, okay? That's what I think they did. I think they put tacks on the piano, like thumbtacks. I don't know. I'm just going to call it tack for here. Please tell me in the comments what it actually is. Maybe she told Fantano. I don't know. I'm not going to watch that interview because I want to stay as ignorant as I can of this project, and also I'm always jealous whenever he gets really good interviews, and I can't watch them because I'm a petty little boy. That's not true. I mean, I'm very happy that he has the success that he has, but it is hard not to be like, I want to interview Tim Heidecker. Damn. And this whole theme, this pleading. And that's the thing, she's asking you to save yourself. Where will you stand? Where will you get out and be free? The album starts very kind of fire and brimstone, very much about talking to us directly in this modern world and what are we going to do and how are we going to get out of it? Where will you stand on Judgment Day? Ends with that speaking in tongues. Then we get to the song, all my friends are going to hell. Just like witches, I pack my sense. So it is War Pigs by Black Sabbath. That's why I have Black Sabbath upside down behind me. And Black Sabbath upside down is not Black Sabbath. Therefore, it's Christian. I don't know if it's on purpose, but it's exactly the same melody. War Pigs is a great anti-war song, even though Black Sabbath sang a lot about Satan. They also got weirdly Christian at times anyways. But it's not exactly the same. It's very intentionally with a southern twang. And all my friends are going to hell. None of them know it from what I can tell. And this whole line where she says, she sings it in this way where it has this kind of predictable rhythm and this like emphasis on this piano, just super epic and crazy. But the best part of it is when she doesn't fit the meter. And I don't want to be like my friends who are going to hell. Like she's so into this song that she can't even think about the meter. There's power in the blood. Now, the whole time I'm listening to this album, I'm like, I recognize that one, but I don't recognize that one. Because I've heard a lot of hymns, because I went to church for a few years, and I was confirmed and all that stuff. My dad accidentally invented Christian rock music. Watch my eulogy for him if you want to learn more about that. But anyways, I thought I recognized this one. This is written by Louis E. Jones, but every version that she does, it's just so raw. It's this voice and this choir. It's all about the blood, and he gets abruptly cut off and then led into a song called Idumea, which is like a Appalachian hymn. I must have heard this in the Lomax recordings. I don't know. And it's got this great plodding piano that has that rattle, and then it leads perfectly to the next song, I Will Be With You Always. Just a single voice recorded super rough. The piano is like these little flourishes. And there's this way that she sings, Release Me. You tell me, I seriously challenge you, okay? You find me a single better vocalization than the way she sings the words Release Me. I'm not saying it's the best, because there's a lot of Change Is Gonna Come by Otis Redding, okay? That's the level of vocals that she is achieving here with Release Me, okay? With her voice gets high and low, and the first time she sings it, she hits the me and then it's staccato, and then the second time it's extended and even goes into a little bit of a yodel. It's just beautiful. And then this whole theme. Once I was as ugly as a harpy-bitten tree, and every voice within me spoke, you will never be free. Once I was as ugly as a harpy-bitten tree, but today I am as perfect as a single blade of grass because I am free. You might notice over my shoulder a bust of Dante. That was part of my father's estate, something which I cherish greatly, and it's been very useful because Dante is all over the place. That Hosier album, he was all over the place there, and this right here is a reference to a specific canto in the Inferno, the story of Dante going through hell, being led by the poet Virgil. It is called, you know what though? I have to get my glasses. Oh, God. They're just sitting over here, so you don't have to wait too long, but it's kind of dark here. So what this is called is, how did I lose it? I had it all right here. No, it's not Canto. I think it's like Canto 13. Is that right? Yes. So it's Canto 13, the 13th song. And it is the woods. The woods for the violent against themselves, meaning people who self-murder. I'm not going to say the actual word because it turns out that messes up YouTube. Okay? Listen to the way that Dante describes this. So forget that. What's important is this. People who commit harm against themselves that results in death live in hell as trees. They are trees which are picked at by harpies, which have the bodies of women and birds kind of mixed together, who pick at their leaves and pick at their branches until they bleed. While they are bleeding, they can speak. When they are not bleeding, they cannot speak. And they will be there forever, ever and ever and ever. As long as time has existed or will exist, people who end themselves will be a harpy-bitten tree. So Dante describes arriving here. Nessus had not yet reached the other shore when we moved into a pathless wood, twisted upward from hell's broken floor. So he just gets off this boat, and it's a pathless wood. So there's so many people in this forest that have committed this act that it's a pathless wood. But there's my drawing of a harpy. It's a pretty good drawing right there. And he has this whole story where he's talking to people and about the nature of pity. And it's an important thing to remember in Dante is that you're not supposed to have pity for these people. They're there because they wanted to be there. That's an important part of Dante's writing. Everybody who's in hell chose to be in hell. Don't feel bad for them. Hate them. Kick them. If they try to ask you for help, you should spit on them. That's Dante's words, not mine. Like the rest, we shall go for our husks on Judgment Day, but not that we may wear them. For it is not just that a man be given what he throws away. So even when Judgment Day comes and everything's all over, these people who ended their own lives will not get to have their bodies because they threw them away. It is not just that a man be given what he throws away. Just for more fun, so you can have an image of what this looks like, this is a 19th century edition of Dante as illustrated by Gustave Doré and as chewed by my dog Toby. Quite annoyed by that. But we can see, we'll show and tell here with the professor, we can see what this actually looks like, what these people look like. And I want you to have this image, if you are a fan of this song, I want you to have this image in your head, because this is how she was before she was saved. Do you see? Do you see the harpies who are picking at the tree? Do you see? Do you see the pain that they deserve and that they want and that they chose for? That's who she was. That's who she was. She was not free. This book is heavy as shit. Okay, so now that we have Dante here, she ends up being as perfect as a single blade of grass. What a lyric. Because there is nothing more perfect than a single blade of grass, because who made a single blade of grass? Nature, chlorophyll. One answer. Another answer is God. So she's appreciating people who end their own lives are primarily chastised for throwing away what they were given, for not appreciating the glory and the bounty of God. And in this case, she is appreciating something as simple as a blade of grass, which is perfection. Do you see what I'm saying about this album? Do you see? I've got the feeling, right? Okay. Next track is Precious Lord, Take My Hand. Oh, everyone knows this song, right? Oh, I knew this song. This is a pretty popular one, I guess, with Episcopals. That's all on the guitar, has a hiss of an old record. This is, again, where I'm like, when I'm listening to it for the first time, I don't know who made it. Then we get to the stamp, may this comfort and protect you. Then leads into the poor wayfaring stranger. I don't like this placement of this song here. It's got the same kind of piano thing as the previous song, and it's the longest song, so it ends up being a little bit samey. And the album has a lot of songs that break this kind of thing up. I love the image of the wayfaring stranger, this kind of desolate. The length of the song makes you feel like you're on this long trip with this person. The imperfection at time of the piano, like even where the little tack sound cuts out because it's all analog, right? There's nothing being controlled by a computer, so it's supposed to go zzz, instead it goes zzz. But that's okay, because we're then led to Nothing But the Blood of Jesus, which is much more upbeat. For the first time in the entire album, we have a beat, okay? 4 on the floor. Like actually like someone stomping on the floor 4 times. And it's funny because if you watch this channel, you know I listen to a lot of music with my baby, and I teach her the 4 count on every song we listen to. This is the only song on the album where I could do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we get to I Know His Blood Can Make Me Whole. Now this is an interesting case where I know the song because I know blues history, but I've never thought of it as a Christian song. Even though it's all about Jesus saving you, I've never thought about it. So she transforms an old blues song by Blind Willie Johnson, which you need to hear. It's a great version. It's a better version. The original's got this great raspy voice. But like what I love is that Reverend Kristin totally reimagines the song. Like plays piano, plays the chords, the voice is gorgeous and has like a real sustain to it. She doesn't try to just make a new version of the blues song. She makes a Southern Pentecostal found footage hymn out of an old blues song. I was a gambler just like you. It's just beautiful. She doubles the voice at a certain point. There's a little warble on the tape, chaotic outro. And then it leads to the last song, How Can I Keep From Singing? Another cover, I guess we could say. But again, when I say cover, it's not really cover. It goes back to that question of like Christian continuity, or cultural continuity. You know, if I were to play Lift Every Voice and Sing, if I were to sing it for you right now, first of all, I would just go to hell. You have to write an extra book for how I butcher that song. But when someone plays or sings Lift Every Voice and Sing, they're not doing a cover. They are singing a song that is a part of a long tradition and has a cultural meaning and place. So these aren't really covers. The fact that we know who wrote them is great, and we can give them credit. But it's not like a cover. It's not like, okay, oh, this is cool. She's doing Mr. Tambourine Man. No. Okay, it's not like Bob Dylan, not like Nick Cave doing the Bob Dylan cover. This is like real church music, and it's just the voice. And there's one thing, maybe, did you notice this? Piano. It's saved. piano is free. The piano has no tack. The piano is clean. It's as limpid as a mountain lake. It is totally saved. The feeling with this at the end is that whole rattling sound, which even though it's beautiful and it kicks ass, totally kicks ass, but that represents the weight and the heaviness of sin on the sinner as they're trying to break through. And then finally on this song, she ends up being free and she's singing. And the whole time the glossolalia is going on in the background, the speaking in tongues. It's very kind of scary and very spooky, especially when it ends completely and there's just hiss. And you think it's kind of scary. And it's funny because basically any time a real religious moment is depicted, you can't help but be scared by it because it's the unknown, right? It really confronts you with the unknown. What an amazing ending. She has been saved, and we have been given a true piece of religious art. So, before I show you my initial take, these are my Patreons. They give me money to buy music. I'm going to buy this album for my daughter, because she freaking lost her mind listening to this album. This album really resonated with her in some way that I had not seen, since the Billie Eilish days. So, thank you, Reverend Kristin, for making great art. Until next time, there's the camera.
All right, so I had to go for a long drive. My daughter was doing Model UN something or other. And it was a 45-minute drive, and it's walking around this town and everything. It's whatever. And then we go drive home, and she's like, "Do you want to listen to something?" And so we listened to that song, Juju on the Beat, from a long time ago. And then I remembered a couple of you auditors, you told me, "Hey, there's this, why aren't you reviewing Reverend Kristin Hayter, okay? A couple people said, how come you're not reviewing it? And the truth is, I'd never heard of it before. So I just tell my daughter to put it on. And we just had this religious experience together listening to this amazing music. And the reason I'm recording this now in my driveway is I don't know anything about it. So I don't know if it's some singer that was discovered and is an authentic singer from somewhere in the South and was recorded. And I don't know if the recording is 20 years old. I don't know if it's some hipster from Brooklyn with a mustache tattoo on her index finger who's imitating that kind of Southern revivalist singing. I don't know. But it was one of the best musical experiences I've ever had, in my entire life, driving back with my daughter in silence. And she was really feeling it, really feeling the sort of dark, spiritual warmth of it. So I don't know if I'm going to even do a whole review of it or if I'm just going to do this. But if you haven't heard Reverend Kristin Hayter, my daughter said dab on those haters, it's Juju on the Beat. It's amazing music. It's dull piano that sounds like an explosion every time it's hit. It gives you the spirit.